these videos, I would like for you to think about a couple of things. What do you see in the video? What do you think? And what do you wonder? And you'll also see this on your hyperdoc. So there's a table. There are 3 videos that we are going to watch. What do you see? What do you think? And what do you wonder? And I'm going to stop share and reshare to make sure I optimize my video. Okay. Here is our first video. Perhaps it was one. This video intentionally does not have any sound. So as you are watching, what do you see? What do you think? And what do you wonder?
Frederica, I'm seeing a gray box on my screen right now, and it might be my screen. If anybody else sees it, please drop it in the chat as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hold on. I don't know what's going on today. Now, are you seeing the correct thing?
Yes, that's right.
Oh, well, y'all could have told me a long time ago. Okay, let me start over here. Okay, I'm going to show you 3 videos. The videos intentionally do not have any sound. You can see the video and it's large video. Is that correct?
That's
yes.
right.
Okay, thank you. My tech problems today are serious. All right, here's the first video. Okay, so again, intentionally no sound on the video. That's the first video. That was an exploding cucumber in your table. So what do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? Here's the second video, maple helicopters. Okay, so that was the second video. And then this is the last video. Okay, so on your hyperdoc, go ahead and make some observations. What did you see? What did you think? And what do you wonder? So take a minute and a half or so and just jot down some notes about each of those videos. What did you see? What do you think? And what do you wonder? And those links to the videos are also in your hyperdoc if you'd like to see them again on your own. Okay, so hopefully you've had some time to jot down just a few notes in your hyperdoc about those videos that you've seen. So let's think for a second about some of the things that you already know about seeds and plants. How do you think, and this is also on your hyperdoc if you want to take some notes there too, but let's say that a plant has lost its seeds and they have fallen to the ground. Why has that happened? Anyone want to drop in the chat or unmute and share how seeds fall to the ground or what might cause them to fall to the ground? Okay, I see in the chat options are animals, gravity, wind. So that's something that you might want to write in your notes just to have. What about when seeds fall to the ground? Are they able to live and grow on their own, or do they have to be with their parents? Anybody have a thought about that? Okay, so those are some of the questions that you all are going to talk about when you get into your groups as you think more about plants. And someone we have, Lisa says, yes, they are able to live and grow on their own. And so as you're thinking about if they are able to live and grow on their own, then what do plants need to grow? So think about that and also write those notes in your hyperdoc. So just as a reminder, you're in a student experience. So I want to remind you of a few of the pieces of vocabulary that we have talked about before. So if you look at this particular slide, we've talked about water and nourishment and the need for flowers and stems and seeds. We've also talked about roots. Are there other things that you all can think of when it comes to plants and what we need to know about how they live and grow? I see lots of things in the chat, so I'm gonna check on those there. So plants need the right environment. They need the right environment, which includes the ground. So we'll unpack that and talk a little bit more about that. They need light and fertilizer. They need nutrients. They need time. The type of environment impacts the type of plants and how it grows. All of those things are important for what we are going to talk about today. And also, as you are having conversations, we want you to make sure that you are using the vocabulary that we've talked about in our plant parts. So if you're talking about seeds, you might also reference fruit, because fruit is what encapsulates the seed. You also might want to recognize that the fruit falls off of the stem of the plant. So make sure that you are referencing those vocabulary terms as you have your conversations in your groups. So what I'm going to ask you all to do is you're going to go into your breakout room and you're going to consider various types of seed images. And so you're going to have, for each of your breakouts, there's a particular seed that you are going to investigate. And as you investigate that seed, I want you to, in your group, you'll have a Google shared workspace. Describe the seed. What does it look like? What does it potentially feel like? I think I would like for you to identify the parts of the seed that help it to move. So we heard earlier that it could be a number of things that allow seeds to move and get to the ground, like wind and animals and gravity. Explain how this might happen for your particular seed. And then also in your second slide for your breakout, make a claim about how that seed is moved from one place to another and provide some evidence from your description of the seed and the identity of the seed. These instructions, again, are on your hyperdoc in the section called How Do Seeds Get Around? So go ahead and find that on your hyperdoc. Again, the instructions are here. The Google shared space has been dropped into the chat for you. So when you are moved into your breakout rooms, be sure to note the number of the breakout room that you are in as you're having conversations with your group and working through how seeds move. So I'm just going to give you a few minutes in your breakout, and then we will come back together and have a conversation. I'm going to open all of the rooms. And you should be able to join your room.
We're getting back in.
Yes, you're back.
Type it away.
That's okay.
This is a short session, so yes, you're coming back already.
Oh, no.
So welcome back. I think yes, it looks like we have everyone back.
The light is so bright.
So welcome back. As you all were thinking about, you've watched the 3 videos. This the prime you're thinking about how seeds move, and you've had the opportunity to focus in on one particular seed type. And as you're thinking about the importance of, we've talked about the importance of plants being able to reproduce and create more of themselves. But based on your observations, you've had seeds that can move by wind, seeds that can move via animals, seeds that move through pressure and water. But why is it important that seeds are dispersed in different ways? And you can read through that Google shared document to see some of the different ways. We're not going to do that. But as you think about why is it important for seeds to be dispersed in different ways?
Well, it sounds like it's survival of the species, right? The more diverse environments, the more diverse ways, it ensures the reproduction of the plant, the survival of the species.
Yeah, thanks, Althea. Any
Oh.
other or additional thoughts?
Good morning. I kind of agree with what she said in terms of seeds being dispersed in different ways. All seeds are different, so they require different modalities to reproduce. And that's a good thing, because if it was only one way for them to reproduce, and if that one way ever went away, then we'd lose that particular type of fruit. So it's important that we look at the different species, and I guess you're thinking about differentiated instruction and all that other good stuff and trying to tie it back in together, that all seeds are different, just like all children are different. And we have to treat them the way that we know that they need to be treated to help them to grow and reproduce and all that other good stuff.
Yeah. Fly and soar in their own
Yes.
ways.
Yes.
Okay. And that definitely connects back to what someone said earlier about optimal environment, right? So not every plant needs bright light, not every plant needs to be watered every week or all of the time, right? There are different conditions that support the growth of those different plants. And so it's important that seeds are dispersed in different ways, because there are different conditions that allow those particular plants to flourish. Even if they are like that exploding cucumber that you all saw at the very beginning is considered an invasive species. It's a weed, but the way that it spreads its seeds is through this significant amount of pressure that blows the seeds everywhere. So very difficult to contain something that just automatically does that. Okay, I'm going to talk through a couple of the other things that we would do in this lesson, but to make some connections for you. So we would talk more about how a seed's particular shape and size affect the rate of its dispersal and how far it would go in terms of being able to be spread across the land in whatever ways that it would do that. We will also talk about what the different types of dispersal pathways would be. So whether that is dispersal by wind, so we saw the maple helicopter that we often recognize by the way it spins down. We could talk about how fast it would come down to the ground. We could talk about the different animals that disperse seeds, as well as water or explosion. And then we would go into a design challenge. So I would ask students to think about, okay, you've talked about it in terms of a plant, but transfer that knowledge into something more novel. So let's say, for example, that your best friend is at home and they're sick and they can't come out and you can't go over there because what they have is contagious. How might you create a way to disperse or share candy with your friend and you're not able to get there? And so they would then think about what are the typical ways that plants disperse their seeds to be able to create or design a model for how they might disperse candy to their friends. So applying what they know about plants or about a science phenomenon to something that they do in everyday life. I was going to have you all do that, but we don't have the time. So as we think about the connections, and the 5E model is a way that often inquiry instruction is planned for students. And so one of the big things that occurs is the science content that we or you all engaged in was around plants or seed dispersal. The literacy practices, can anybody think of any literacy practices that you engaged in that period of time?
We did writings. We had to write down our notes.
Mm-hmm.
Did some Google research.
You did some Google research or some other things?
And communicated with each other, sharing with each other.
Yep. You also reviewed vocabulary. Yep, vocabulary is in the chat. You reviewed video and made sense of videos, right? So I didn't say anything about the videos except the name of the video. You weren't given any information about, we're going to talk about plant dispersal. I just said watch the video. So you're activating that prior knowledge and coming up with your own vocabulary to make sense of what you just watched. Before I said we're talking about plants and seed dispersal, and don't forget to use flowers and stems and fruit to think through that. Anything else that you can think of? So for those of you who did the Google research, there was some text-based support. So you pulled from that text that was on Google to make sense of your notes. And then one of the largest things that you did was you made a claim. So you made claims about what you know and some of the text that you read. So in science and in STEM in general, argumentation, and not negative argumentation, but argumentation is a foundational literacy practice. And you did all of that in the span of 20 minutes to get to a claim or an argument about how your particular seed dispersed itself, or your plant dispersed its seeds. So that's a way for the science content and the literacy practices to come together. So we often think about literacy practices as very discrete pieces, but when we bring them together and integrate them into our instruction, it naturally comes. We just have to be explicit about sharing with students, you've done argumentation, or you've made claims, or you've used a text-based protocol to make sense of what you are understanding, or you're taking your prior knowledge and being able to connect that with a fruit and a seed and what that means. So these practices definitely support each other. And I'm going to drop in the chat a Venn diagram, a triple Venn diagram of 3 particular frameworks that support building literacy in STEM. So one are the standards for mathematical practices. So really these are about digging deeper into the content, being able to make sense of the problems that are being solved, being able to use the symbols of math to communicate with others. The other framework are the science and engineering practices from the Next Generation Science Standards. These also connect with students being able to build models. So if you were to design that package for the friend that was sick, that is a way to design a model of seed dispersal. There's also constructing explanations and designing solutions. So all of that goes into the design. So it was really about students being able to engage in activity before content, or have some type of introduction to the content that doesn't overwhelm them with the vocabulary or with the technical components of the academic language. So engaging them in activity and then giving them information for how they can explain their thinking, and then revising their thinking through different models. The third framework are the English language practices. So developing a strong base of knowledge, read, writing, and speaking with reference back to evidence. So even if you in your Google shared workspace made a claim that was not all the way correct or all the way as science would say it, but you have evidence for that, then that claim goes further than if you just stated your opinion, because you are using text-based evidence and you're using different information to develop that particular claim. Okay, so Ivy has told me I have gone over time. So I apologize for that. This session was really quick. But as you think about building literacy in STEM, just a couple of key messages. Provide students with activity before you provide them with content. And then really think about what are ways that they can build models and bring in vocabulary after they've had an opportunity to make sense of the conceptual pieces that you all want them to learn from the beginning. So if you would, in the chat, you could drop some things. I want to build upon this session. This was a very quick introductory session to building literacy in STEM. And thank you for being here today. Our next session is understanding dropout prevention with Jacinda. So we'll move over to her line and we will talk to you all soon. Thank you so much for being here.